Hey cuties, I'm Miles Sexton, a content creator, activist, and loud and proud disruptor of the norm. On Our Private Bits, we talk about the things and people that don't get talked about enough, or at all. Trust me, as a sober, HIV-positive, non-binary person, I would know. Join me as I chat with people in my life and from around the world whose stories deserve to be heard. Maybe you'll learn something new, and you will definitely LOL. Our Private Bits is also part of the Acast Curator Network. All right, cuties, today on Our Private Bits, we have our first social media duo. They are Melissa Peteras and Tracy Taylor, who also happen to be the cutest couple ever. You might recognize Melissa online from her passionate cleaning videos, folding, and DIY experts, and Tracy from her very relatable storytelling on TikTok. Want to say hi, you two?
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so happy. When we met at Your Morning, we were like backstage. It was like quite the day, the World AIDS Day. And I was like so excited because I recognized you first, Melissa, but I couldn't figure out where I knew you from. And I was like, I don't know, what is it? And it's always that case. It's I definitely saw you on TikTok.
Yes, that's often the case. Where do I know that person
Totally.
from? Yeah, and I think that when we all met, we sort of almost missed the Star Trek guy.
Oh my God. Sir Patrick Stewart.
Yes, because you two were very deep in a conversation.
We were chatting.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
But it was pretty cool. I was so funny because, Tracy, we were talking and then all of a sudden I feel like we both kind of heard his voice on the monitor and then whipped our heads. And I was like, what? How did I miss this person coming backstage that day?
Yeah.
It was pretty surreal.
I knew he was there. I knew he was going to walk behind us, but we got so involved in a conversation that I completely forgot to mention to you that he was there, that's what I was waiting for. And then next thing you know, Melissa's like, you guys missed it.
I came out of the studio, Patrick walks by, and you guys are just chatting.
We were, but I think that's the beauty. Sometimes you just you meet someone and you just connect on such a vulnerable level. And I don't know what it is that happens, but I just loved it. And I was like, I have to have them both on the podcast to get into more things. So
yeah, for sure.
It's funny how the universe works that way.
Yeah.
So now, I feel like you two have I think it's a unique situation and story is that you two met online, right?
Yes.
So how did that happen? What was the video that caught your eye? I need to hear more about this.
It's always really embarrassing when people ask how we met.
Yes.
It depends on who you're talking to if you really want to answer the question properly or not, because the answer is TikTok. We met on TikTok, which at the time when we met was really just a dancing app for children. 100%. Right? That's exactly what it was.
So it's a little bit embarrassing.
No, I love it.
Because then there's a big we have to then further explain,
yes.
Right? But yeah, it depends who we're telling the story to.
Yeah, so I first saw a video of Melissa doing a little comedy sketch.
Yes.
So this was pre-laundry anything.
Oh.
So she was doing a little comedy sketch, and I had never done a duet of anyone before.
Okay.
But I saw this and was so compelled to duet her because I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I also wasn't wearing any pants at the time, so I just decided to just hit record. And I sort of said something to the tune of, who is this woman? She's hilarious. Where is she? This is hilarious. And then that's it. And I didn't think much of it because I didn't really know what I was doing on TikTok at the time. And then
I didn't really know what I was doing either. I was just sort of trying to find my way. And
as we all were.
Yeah, I think we all started off lip syncing and, that kind of stuff at the beginning. And I was doing a bit of comedy stuff.
And this was during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I had sort of just switched over from longer content on Facebook, I hate to say it, over to TikTok, trying to figure it out. And so I had seen that she had duetted me, but I had already been following her and watching her. So I was like, oh my, she's duetted me. And then I sort of duetted you back.
Yeah, so she duetted me back, and it was laundry had kicked in by this time. It was 3 weeks. She waited 3 weeks to duet me back.
No
keep it going.
There was reason.
So she did this duet back, and she was wearing a T-shirt. She said, in the duet, she said, I'm sorry it took me so long to reply, but I was waiting on this T-shirt being made. And she steps away from the dryer, and the T-shirt says, I have a huge lesbian crush on you. And I'm watching this in Sydney, Australia, going, what? Did she have that T-shirt made for me? And then So I sent her a private message.
Yes.
Right? As you do. I sent her a direct message and I thought, so you had a T-shirt made for me. No reply.
Because at the time, I didn't read my DMs. I was pretty overwhelmed by a lot of DMs that I was getting, and on Facebook and everything else. And I thought, you know what? I think it's best practice.
Yes.
Don't read them.
For sure.
So I never looked at them, and she had written a comment on the sort of duet, and I wrote one back, not realizing the time difference.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, that's too much. Mm-hmm. That's too much. I shouldn't have written that. I wrote something like, oh, of course, you're my TikTok girlfriend, something to that effect. I thought, nope, that's too much. So I delete it. I try again. She still doesn't respond. I'm like, nope, that's too much.
I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
She's asleep. So it's not that she hasn't even read it yet. So I keep deleting it. And anyways, I finally leave it as is. She sees it. And so we just sort of communicated on TikTok videos at that point because I still hadn't read my DM.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm thinking the whole time, what's going on? I look in the comments of that video and someone's like, that's a great T-shirt. Where did you get it from? And she'd replied back to that person, oh, I got it made for Everyday Trace. And here I am thinking to myself, what is going on? What is with this woman? She's got this T-shirt made for me, but she's not replying back to my DM. I'm like, you know what? She's in Canada. I'm in Australia. Like, this is not a thing.
Yes.
Then I go into one of her lives one night and she's like, is my TikTok girlfriend in here? I think I just saw her come in. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, she's got a TikTok girlfriend. Oh, lucky that girl. And she's like, Everyday Tracy, you in here? And I was like, me? What's happening? Does this woman just want to flirt with me publicly or what's happening here?
Yeah, I really didn't know how the whole thing worked with DMs either. Yeah, I just didn't know. And I had originally left TikTok briefly because somebody called me a middle-aged lesbian, and I didn't know that until they had called me that. And I thought, oh, wow, I really am. So I'd left TikTok, and then I accepted that I actually am that.
Yes.
Went back on. So everything was just sort of happening at once, and I was trying to get my bearings on how this whole thing worked. And then I finally opened up my DMs to message her and realized she had messaged me that long ago.
So how long of a period did you wait to open that message?
2 months.
2 months. Oh.
Yeah. And that was it. From there, it was sort of instant. I mean, we talked a little bit on TikTok, and then we moved over to Insta because it's an easier communication.
Easier. Totally.
Yeah. And then within like 2 or 3 days, we decided we'd do a video call.
Yes.
And in one of the video calls, Melissa pretty much said, listen, I've got 3 kids. I live in Canada. If you have no interest in moving here, then there's no need for us to talk. And I thought, okay.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I mean, yeah, I could talk about moving to Canada. I mean, it's the pandemic. I've lost my job. I've got really no prospects going on here at the moment. So yeah, I can entertain that. And we did. We entertained it.
Yeah, and then it was full on. I mean, we would talk 6 to 8 hours on video every single day.
Love it.
Which was interesting because now, I mean, at the time, I think we were it was terrible because she couldn't get here because Australia was locked down, so she couldn't leave.
That's right. They were like even stricter, I think, than here.
Yeah, we were super strict, and people were sort of separated from their families, and they were separated from their spouse and their kids in different countries, but you'd have to apply for an exemption to leave the country. And I thought, well, if these people are getting rejected like 30 times, there's no way they're going to make me leave to meet my internet girlfriend in Canada.
My TikTok crush. I need to go see her in Canada.
Right. So, and that was the thing, because then we joined a few groups, like Facebook groups that were people in the same situation, right? And how do we see each other because we're sort of locked down. So, people were being denied 40, 50, 60 times. And we were like, oh, geez, this is crazy.
Yeah. And yes, because it was 10 months before I actually touched foot down in Canada. So we went through some times where we were like, this isn't going to work. Like everything seems to be against us. So we went through some really hard times in the first 10 months without even knowing each other, just trying to get to each other. So eventually we hired a lawyer and got everything done properly. And I rang Melissa one day and just said, yes, I've got my exemption. And I had to leave within the month.
Yeah. Oh,
we on our first try, we got through. And,
no way.
Sending all this evidence of your relationship. Well, that's a bit tricky because we haven't actually met.
Totally.
So that was, but I mean, during that, the 10 months, we also didn't know. It was like, we didn't know if it was going to be 3 years.
Yes.
I mean, none of us knew when this was going to end. We didn't know if it was going to be
so
3
uncertain.
years, 5 years. But we decided early on that it was really no different than any other relationship in terms of just committing to each other. And but it was interesting though, because I think we both agree that it was a very interesting way to get to know someone on a completely different level with no physical touch, no nothing, just, you
were doing it like,
Zoom.
The Victorian era where you have to like,
write a letter.
Dearly beloved, thinking of you today in the meadow,
That's exactly what it was.
And that's
Victorian.
That's exactly what we did though. I mean, we would send each other packages in the mail. I would, send her my hoodie with,
folded,
with folded, of course, with my perfume on it, or we would send each other, chocolate from each other's countries, and she never unfolded the hoodie. I think you used it as a pillow.
I used it as a pillow.
And then I had what we call Mini Melissa made this like silly doll. It's so creepy, and you like put your face on it, and it was all squished up. And I mailed her that, and that's in a couple of videos, and only a few people noticed. They're like, "What is that doll?" And when I ordered it, I thought it was going to be almost life size, but it wasn't. It was about this big.
Oh
so I was like, okay, that's super weird. So we just did fun stuff like that back and forth. And then we bought a house together before she moved here.
No way.
Yeah. So it was like FaceTime.
Yes.
We would go through houses, or, depending on the time, I would send her videos, and then we picked a house, and I, on the day of, basically held the phone and like carried her over the threshold on the phone. And then I was in the house probably for 2 months, I think, before Trace got there. And of course we were going to completely gut it down to so I was trying to get it in order, thinking I had more time. And then when we got word that she was moving October 1st, I was like, oh, she's coming. There's no kitchen. There's no furniture. It's like dirt floors. And I had been sleeping on the floor. And I ordered a bed or whatever, and then had the bed delivered, but didn't sleep in it until she got there. I thought I'll just wait until she goes. Yeah, we'll sleep in the bed together. So I continued to sleep on the floor with a Paw Patrol blanket and like some piece of foam. It was terrible, but and then I mean, that's what we always laugh about, because when I picked her up at the airport, we met and moved in together 40 minutes later.
Whoa.
So but I mean, we talked a lot about it during our conversations.
It didn't matter what we were talking about.
Always.
At least once a day, the conversation would veer towards, what if we don't like each other when we meet, or what if we don't like the way the other person kisses, and then obviously sex.
Yeah, totally.
Right? I mean, sex was one thing, but I feel like we were more of the, sex doesn't matter if the kiss is bad, because we believe that you can't fix kissing.
You can fix sex, I think, because you can get to know each other's bodies, and you can fix that if it's awkward at the beginning. But kissing, that's chemistry.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So I feel like if you've got that right, then obviously the sex will lead from there. But the kissing is what we were most stressed about.
Yeah.
And when were we going to kiss? We were so stressed about when. Is it going to be at the airport? Is it going to be in the car? Is it going to be when we get home? Like, we talked about it.
Because you never have the opportunity to do this weird planning thing. And as it turns out, I couldn't even go into the airport because it was pandemic. So I had to, just basically drive up and, before they shush you to go forward and jump out. And she had seen me out of the corner of her eye and wondered, I wonder who that little person is. Now, keeping in mind that we talked many times about like our bodies, like how tall we are, what because it is hard to get an idea when you're looking at someone on a FaceTime.
Totally.
Basically.
It distorts so much.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we had done it on Insta.
Yes.
And one time Insta was down. So we had to FaceTime. Honestly, we both screamed when the thing came on because, you're so bad looking on FaceTime.
Totally.
There's such a huge difference.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Insta, you look good.
But it also inverts. So everything,
it was
so TikTok inverts and Insta inverts. So Melissa's tattoos were on the wrong side.
Oh,
like
right.
everything was different. My nose ring was on the other side. I was like, oh my God, you're a different person
That's
in
so
this.
funny. I wouldn't even have thought
we have
about
to
that.
do FaceTime from now on because I've been looking at a flipped version of you for ages. Also, everything was flipped. Like
the room,
the house, everything was completely the opposite way to what I imagined it to be because I'd only ever seen it flipped.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's too funny.
But it was.
But we talked about height a lot. So height was a big thing.
Okay.
And Melissa,
I told her my height.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'6".
Okay.
And she had told me her height, and I said, "Oh, it's only an inch. It's only an inch. It's not that big of a deal." And then I always say, like when I actually got out of the car and was hugging her, first of all, she was wearing heels.
Yes.
I didn't. Okay. To be fair, I lived in Australia. I didn't really own shoes. The only nice-ish shoes I had were boots.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll pop them on, right? Because other than that, I was wearing flip-flops or what I like to call thongs, but flip-flops for the best part. And I thought, I've got to put your best foot forward. I'm not going in there in thongs.
Just
so
barefoot coming out of the airport.
Boots. And then Melissa comes up. I'm like, whoa. 5'6" who? Who's 5'6"?
No. And then I'm like when we first hugged, I always say like I felt like I was at the mall at the Lost Children. I was hugging my dad's leg. Right? I'm like this woman is like she's Shrek, I'm Donkey. This is crazy. What? Now she was standing on a little ledge plus the heels, but I honestly felt like I'm hugging her thigh, and I thought, oh my, and of course she thought the same thing. Now when the heels came off, we got more used to it. But I think that she didn't know that she's actually taller than what she thought.
Okay.
I think that's what we've decided. That I am 5'6", but she's a little bit taller than she had thought. So.
That's so funny.
Well, how often do you measure yourself, right?
100%.
One time someone tells you your height, you're like, I'm going to go with that. And you stick with it for ages.
Yeah.
So did I lie? I lied, but I didn't know. I didn't know. You don't even measure yourself. You really, really don't. So but I feel like I was hugging this person. I was like, oh, somebody's lied about that.
Right. She's like, who is this little person? But, so, yeah, I mean, it was a long 40-minute drive home because it was... we had talked, we knew each other inside and out, but we had never had any physical. So this hug, we never did kiss at the airport. I said to her, I don't want to kiss at the airport with everybody looking.
Totally.
And that isn't the time. And
I said, I don't want to kiss in the car. I don't want my first kiss to be like leaning over the glove box. It's not for me. So we waited. And then when we got to the house, there was this big, I'm seeing the house that we bought for the first time, but we still haven't kissed. She's giving me a tour of our house, and I'm like, when are we going to pass? I don't know when it's happening.
Oh my gosh. So when did this kiss happen?
I was showing her a coat closet, and she's like, I don't care about the coat closet. And then we kissed. And it was such a relief.
The biggest relief of my life.
I bet.
Because it's the most anticipated kiss I think you've ever had in your life. Yeah. Because generally at the end of a date, you just kiss or whatever. Totally. It's not, you don't think about it. It's something you never really think about. But in this case, there was so much buildup to it. Something as simple as a kiss. Yeah. But I was so relieved because I was like, okay, it's okay. Everything's fine. Yeah. Everything else will be fine. I think we both knew right then that it was going to be okay. Yeah. Physically.
So sparks happened.
Yeah, sparks happened. It was a bit of a movie kiss. Yes, it was in a coat closet. Okay. So
I mean, it's kind of like metaphorical in a way for us queer people,
No, but I just kind of thought we've got to do it now. I cannot live with the tension any longer. It wasn't just the tension of that day. It was the tension of the flight on top of that, the 10 months, everything.
100%.
It was so much tension. I was like, I'm going to explode. I am literally going to just pop.
Absolutely.
So I just grabbed her.
It's a journey. I mean, it was a long flight and then a long drive home, and it's exhausting, right? And you're sitting on a plane for 20 hours, and then you're supposed to be fresh and ready.
Yeah.
So yeah,
there's a lot. Okay, so I have some follow-up questions. First, I have to go back to the T-shirt.
Yes.
Did you actually get the t-shirt made?
I did.
For her? Okay.
Yes, I did. And it never came. And then I had to redo it. And it was just this long wait,
God,
which is why it was 3 weeks. Cause usually I can get a t-shirt made and it's, 7 or 8 days.
Pandemic.
And so I did in fact have the t-shirt made.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's good to know. Has the t-shirt like made cameo appearances like since then or no?
This is a sore subject.
Oh, okay.
This is actually
because I mailed her the t-shirt.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I left it at my cousin's house.
Oh no.
I had a pile of clothes. It was like my last minute clothes that I wore to my cousin's house the night before. And then they were driving me to the airport in the morning. And I had the clothes. I also had the t-shirt, but I wanted to put it in my carry-on because I thought if anything gets lost, I don't want it to be the t-shirt.
No, absolutely.
And then I left a pile of like 20-year-old track pants or whatever it was there. And I'd put the t-shirt with it. And I said to my cousin, just throw that in the bin. I don't need that stuff anymore. Like don't need it. And I accidentally put the t-shirt in that pile.
So the t-shirt's gone.
Listen, the t-shirt's gone.
That's okay.
It's a simple t-shirt. We can get it made again.
You know?
Yes.
Yes. So we don't actually have the tangible t-shirt anymore, but we'll always have the video. So it's there.
Exactly. And so what do you think then, I guess like over such a long period of time, like what made you both hold on to like trying to make this work?
There was just something there. And we could never, I don't think we could ever really put our finger on it. It was just, it was so instant. For me, I feel like it was strangely just instant the second I saw one of her videos because I followed her right away and I would watch every single day. And then once we started to talk, there was just this strange, deep connection with someone you've never met in person.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so early on we were like, that's it. It's just us. And, trying to talk about sort of what your relationship rules are, what your boundaries are for someone that, again, you've never seen in person. Yes. So like, what are we doing here? What are our sort of rules? Like, we're not going to see anybody else. Like we are. And I think that's hard for people to grasp who are outside of that. Because I think we had a hard time saying, I said, no, I have a girlfriend. And they'd be like, wow, you've never met her. Yeah. Right. And it's like, well, I just feel like we got to know each other on such a deeper level that you actually don't get in person. You miss a whole bunch of stuff when you're dating because a lot of it gets clouded with sex and physical touch.
100%.
And that also skews your some of the decisions that you make.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's based on physical stuff. So I don't know. I felt like, yes, it was torture, but I think in the long run, it was a good thing.
We both had our ups and downs. Like there'd be times where I was like something came out in the news once where it's like, no one's leaving and it said almost like a year or something like that. And then, so I sent Melissa the article and I said, listen, I think we should call it off. Like we did have times where one of us went, this is never going to happen, right? Because it was so, we just kept saying to each other, if you could give us a time limit, then we could know what we're working with. Even if it's 5 years, we know what we're working with.
Totally.
But the unknown was what was killing us. So there were times where either Melissa was feeling like this is not going to happen or me. But then we just kind of just picked each other up from it, I think, because we knew we had this deep, I don't know,
because it wasn't going away. It wasn't something that you could just say, okay, well, we tried.
Yeah.
It wasn't going away. And I also thought that, I don't know, I mean, there was times where I was like, I don't care how long it takes.
Yes.
Right. And then you'd flip back 2 seconds later to, I can't do this. But I think we just kept coming back to it. We never really, we didn't waver too much. I mean, again, it was just the unknown. That was the biggest, that was the biggest thing was the unknown. And of course, under regular circumstances, you would say, well, come have a visit for a month or so and we'll see. But we just didn't have that. So we had to go all in or nothing. And we just decided.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends and family were very much like, I think moving's a bit too much for you. Like I sold all of my things, my car, everything in my apartment, absolutely everything. So everyone was like, well, maybe just put it in storage. I'm like, what's the point in putting it in storage? So then I have to deal with it from Canada. Like, well, if you want to come back. So I think everyone was banking on it not working. Except for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's really tough to navigate.
When she was saying, I think that if I store things, it's sort of What was your saying? I'm rooting.
It's betting against your team.
Yeah, totally. You're investing in energy into something the opposite of what
I'm a
you
big
want.
believer in that you don't bet against your team in sport. And I think that in life as well. Like you don't go, oh, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to have a little backup plan. Like what's the point? Like
totally.
At the end of the day, if it didn't work out, I get on a plane, I go back to Australia, and then I find somewhere to live. I get another car, I get a couch off Facebook Marketplace. It's not difficult.
Totally.
That's what we kept saying was I think.
It's the same as if I was dating someone in Sydney and we broke up, we were living together, I'd have to get out, find a place,
Exactly.
Yeah,
fine,
people
I'd have
kept
some more
saying,
basics, but that's okay.
Yeah, what if you break up? Well, then we break up like any other relationship. I mean, it wasn't
100%.
People were very uncomfortable with.
Yeah, they were uncomfortable.
The all in.
Yeah.
And of course, neither of us had ever done anything like this before.
Yeah, totally.
I've never met anybody online. I've never done anything like that. So it wasn't like this was just our bag, right? This is what we do. It was it was totally strange. And it was a matter of just kind of not listening to those other voices and just going with what we felt was the right thing. It's hard when
the voices are your trusted friends and family.
Yes, absolutely.
Who you listen to for everything. And you had to turn around and say, I know, it sounds crazy. I know that, but you need to trust me on this.
Yeah.
So we knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to convince everyone else what this is when they don't know, right?
What do you think, like, I guess, like, what was the learning that came out of having those conversations with those people? Because I feel like that must have been a lot to navigate. And
I think it came down to proving them wrong.
Yeah.
But that's just time.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing we could do. We had to just accept the fact that they might have been talking, laughing, whatever it was to themselves amongst, like, not in our presence. But then when it came down to it, it was just like, wait and see. And I mean, everybody's come around now. Nobody, because we've proven that, you know, we've been together for 3 years and it did work, and nobody really ever talks about it. And we make jokes about it. Like, you know, we met on a dancing app and for children, but that's all it was. It was just time because people bet against you. And unfortunately, even your loved ones will just wait and see. And I'm sure they had private bets. I'm sure they did.
100%.
You know,
but it's like, you know, I think it's just what people need to realize, though, is that, like, you know, we are in a new era of, like, a different way that we communicate. And it's like, and I think that, like, we're just going to hear more and more stories of this. Like, you know, one of my best friends also, like, met his husband over the internet, like, during the pandemic, that, like, lived in I think it was like Poland or something like that. Like, it's just like, you know, but I think it's just like what I think maybe the older generations don't realize is that, like, these platforms are just another way of communicating.
Yeah,
you know?
That's just it. Like, times have changed.
Yes.
And I think that the pandemic also opened up the world to a lot of us.
Exactly.
You know, not everyone, I'm a social worker, so I was working the entire time, although my job did change significantly, but Trace was in tourism. So obviously that was, you know, non-existent.
Yeah,
and
totally.
so we all had more time to be online and exploring different things. And I just, you know, but times have changed, obviously. Yes. I mean, communication is completely different than what it was.
Totally.
So, you know, and if it wasn't for the pandemic, then we wouldn't have met. So, I mean, we're sort of thankful for all of the things that fell into place, I think.
Agreed. I love it. I always like, I don't know. When I hear stories like this, it really makes me think of, like, in Greek mythology, like, they talk about, like, the creation of humans, and that, like, humans were, like, 4 parts, and it was, like, 2 men, 2 women, but they were all attached together, and the gods divided them. And then so, like, we go throughout our lives, like, you know, looking for those other parts of ourselves to, like, become whole again. So, like, when I hear stories like this, it's like, you know, I think it's kind of like, I don't know, it feeds into my fantasy of, like, you know, there is this, you know, these other parts of ourselves that we, like, connect with, and there's something so unexplainable that happens, like, between 2 people, like, when they just connect.
That's just it. It is unexplainable. We've never been able to really, you know, explain what that connection was and why it was there and why it was instant.
I love it. I'm so here for it. So now, okay. So you're moved from Sydney, right? To Canada. Like, what was that like? Like, what were some of the biggest differences? Like, it must have been such a shock.
It was a huge shock.
Yeah.
I think
in fairness, before you even start, we thought, we believed that we had that all ironed out because I just told her about it. So it was going to be fine.
Like,
I told her about the differences. I told her about the snow.
Yes.
I told her about the cold, but it is very difficult to explain cold.
Yes.
It's hard to explain temperature and snow. But we were like, this is going to be fine because I've explained it. So now you can continue on reality.
Okay. So I'm not one that hasn't lived overseas before. I lived in London for 8 years. So I know what it's like to be away from home. So I thought, I've got that.
Okay.
I've got that down.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's fine. And I also thought that it's cold in London and it's cold in Canada. So again, I'm going to be fine. And Melissa's explained it and everything's going to be fine. Boy, was I wrong.
Oh, yeah.
So wrong. When I moved to London, I was 20.
Yes.
So meeting friends, finding friends.
Totally.
Piece of cake.
Yeah.
39, moving to a small town. Not so
No.
Not so easy whatsoever. The weather, I've never underestimated weather in my entire life more so than this. I arrived on October 1st.
Oh, gosh.
Right? So in the middle of fall. Before I'd left, this like outdoor company called Kathmandu had a sale on, and I thought, you know what, I'll pick myself up a little winter jacket for when I go to Canada. This would be great.
In Australia?
So they just call them winter coats. That's the story.
It's like a shell.
So I got this winter coat, and surprisingly, when I got here in October, I had to wear it, and I thought, well, okay, this will keep me warm. But I didn't realize that it's like pretty much just a spring jacket. That's all it was. I've never worn it in winter. When I got here, Melissa's like, you're not gonna survive here at all in that. That's
we're going to the Canada Goose store.
We instantly had to go out, get 2 parkas. She's like, fur, it's down. It's like all of these different materials that and boots. I mean, again, truly, she had never worn shoes. So that was difficult because she didn't have any socks.
Oh.
And she didn't have any shoes. She had these high heel boots and thongs, nothing else. So, you know, I said, well, you must know about Blundstones because they're Australian. She's, I never heard of them, and nobody in Australia wears those.
That's so funny.
I said, well, that can't be. Yeah, I said that can't be.
There's
everybody
so many
here
things
wears
that
them.
are Australian here that is laughable. Like it really is.
Like Uggs.
Yeah, like you think everyone in Australia wears Uggs.
No.
We don't.
What
and
else?
Blundstones, I was like, never heard of them. I met a friend who owns an Australian cafe here and I bought a pair of Blundstones and I was wearing them there and he's like, oh, you actually have Blundstones. I'm like, well, apparently everyone has them here. He goes, have you ever heard of them before? I'm like, no, never. Never heard of them. But here it's like the Australian shoe. So it's a bit crazy. But
so funny.
Like the weather's probably been one of the most challenging things, quite obviously. I've never lived in snow before. And where we live, there's so much snow and ice that could kill you. I fear for my life every time I leave the house.
She
walking
can't
from
walk.
the back of the house to the car is...
She walks.
Have you bought the spikes yet for your boots?
Yes.
Okay.
But she walks. It's one of those things that you never think about. I mean, we're used to it, so we adapt our body position. Yeah, but not her. She walks with her like a starfish and like one clumpy step at a time.
But I feel like that's the way to do it. I haven't fallen over yet, so that's probably the way to do it.
She also thought that you walked on top of snow. And I kept trying to say to her, no, like you go down. She's like, no, I don't believe you. I know you walk on top of it.
You just have like Lord of the Rings as a reference where like the elves walk on top of the snow.
That's what she thought.
Yeah.
Snow that much.
Yeah,
and this is like, no, you'll sink in. I'm like, what?
That's so interesting. I love this.
So things like that are really quite crazy.
Yeah.
Also,
a furnace, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I would say that because they didn't have heat. So she had a heating blanket.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, well, that is strange because it isn't that cold there, but it's because they don't have like fireplaces or furnaces or anything like that. So they would, if it's a cool day, you would have a heating blanket. So the furnace was new to you.
I mean, there's so many differences. Even even people
Yes.
is so different. I think Australians are very similar to the English. So I didn't really see that many cultural differences between us and the English. We're both super sarcastic and both swear like troopers. But in Canada, I would find, especially with my swearing, that I would need to watch my words all the time.
Yeah.
Like I would just be swearing at the supermarket and going, oh, fuck, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And Melissa's like, no, you can't.
I'm like, please stop doing that, because it's like an 80-year-old cashier who has so taken aback because she just said, so the cashier didn't say anything and we're just standing. I don't think anything of it. And Trace says to the cashier, oh, I'm so sorry. I really fucked up. And the cashier is like grasping at her chest because and I was like, oh, you can't, don't say that. Like you can't, you really need to watch. And she's like, what do you mean? That's not bad. And she uses the C word, which we don't use here. They use it very loosely to everybody.
It is an expression.
Yes. And I'm like, oh no, we reserve that.
Yeah.
And even when we say it, and so I think, the language was a bit,
That's so
and the
interesting.
boldness.
I'm quite bold. I think Australians are in general, if we feel something, we say that something. There's never any like beef between people because we're always just like saying things as they are or as they come.
Totally.
And
Canadians
I think Canadians,
we don't do that. We just sweep it under the rug.
It's in your sorry thing. Like the joke of all Canadians saying sorry runs so much deeper than just that
100%.
word. They're so, and you see it even in driving. When you get to like a four-way stop, they're like, oh no, you go. No, you go. And I'm Australian, I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like it's in every part of your culture.
Yes.
So I find that so hard to deal with at times because I appear rude.
Yeah.
And I know that
So
I appear
funny.
rude, but at the same time, I'm like, this isn't rude. This is just, and Melissa describes it now as bold. We've had to put that word behind it because rude was triggering.
Yeah, fair.
Because I keep saying, well, you got to watch that. You got to watch that. Like, oh, don't be like that. Be nice. Like, just say, just let it go. Let it go. And that's just not, not who she is. So that's been a little bit of a curve.
I think yes, I underestimated it and that's hard to get used to. But I think that culture thing is harder in a way because that's almost like, well, that's who I am.
Totally.
Right. And why do I have to adjust myself because people can't deal with me swearing in the supermarket? Like I don't mean any harm.
Yes.
It's not like I'm telling someone to fuck off. I just went, oh my God, I fucked up. Sorry. So yeah, it's been really hard to sort of mute bits of my personality to appear palatable to other people is really difficult. And I can do it sometimes. And other times I'm like, fuck it, why do I have to do it?
Yeah.
I've sworn a lot already. See?
Yeah. No, I love it.
But I think, why do I have to do that just because I feel like just shaking some people sometimes going, don't be so polite. Like just say what you're feeling and get it out there. So
I respect that too.
Yeah, I think that part of the culture's been hard. Whether I can get used to, like I didn't bring a coat today. I'm getting used to it.
Yeah.
But with the weather came driving. Not only driving on the other side of the road, but driving in the snow is tricky. One time she called me from the supermarket, which is a half a mile up the road, crying, saying, you're going to have to come get me. I can't, it's a tornado. It's a, and I was like,
there was
what?
snow swirling like this. There was ice. And I was sliding.
I think, well, I don't know what's happened. That can't be. And I go look out the window. I'm like, no, it's black. Like the street is black. I'm like, what? And it was just a little bit of snow that was swirling because, the way that the stores were set up. And she just thought that she was just
we're going to have different
Dorothy and going to get swept
away.
It was
a storm. It was crazy.
For sure.
So, I mean, the driving has been a bit of a learning curve, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a lot of things, food, everything. Yes. Everything is different. Sunlight.
You don't realize how much familiarity of things and stuff is comforting.
Yes, exactly.
You take away the familiarity of literally everything, the landscape, the driving, the weather, the people, and it's really jarring. I get very homesick.
Yeah,
I do all the time. But sometimes not even just for people or places, but just for familiarity.
Totally.
I do just want to go into the supermarket and pick the brand of cheese that I know and like.
Yes.
Right? That might sound trivial, but I think when it's
they don't have the same butter. They don't have orange cheese.
Yeah.
I mean, it's lots of different things. She's like, I don't know what this is. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to grocery shop because I don't know, why is your butter not like ours?
Yes.
Why don't you, why isn't your butter just in the fridge? And why is your cheese orange?
Yeah.
I don't know why it is. I don't know. That's just what it is. I have no idea.
Yeah. And you'd think it would get easier with time. And in some ways it does. Mm-hmm. But in other ways, you just think, I just want some sort of familiarness.
Totally.
Whatever that is, a street sign, something, like anything really. So it can be really difficult. And when I get homesick, it's hard in our relationship, right? Because Melissa it looks like it reflects upon her, right? I brought you to this country. I, did this. So it is a really difficult thing to navigate. Mm-hmm. Like, no, it's okay that I missed that, but I still want to be here. Like it's tough.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's like, your body is, it's like was programmed for 30 plus years to do things and like things a certain way that it's like, it very much becomes this like unlearning of like having to almost retrain that safety net that we've created around ourselves, because our body just automatically wants to go back to being like, well, this is comfortable, this feels safe.
Yes.
And now you're having to reteach yourself that, of course I would.
Things that you don't even have to think about in the past, even, sunscreen was a big one. I mean, generally we don't wear sunscreen in the winter for the most part, but she's appalled by that.
Totally.
Right? So like every morning she gets up and puts sunscreen on, and I am this terrible person who is not wearing sunscreen every day. But so it's lots of little things. But of course the kids, like going from no children to having 3 kids is a lot. And I think that I underestimated that as well, because I thought, I got great kids. Who wouldn't love them?
Totally.
But that's hard to be, a person who's, no kids, lives in the city, in the downtown core of Sydney, moving to,
it's a bit more rural, I guess, where you are, right?
Pretty small town. And you've got 3 kids ranging in age from 21 to 10.
Yes.
So you got the whole thing. But that's been tricky.
Yeah, it's been tricky. It's been really great at times because you kind of almost get an instant family.
Yeah.
And the kids are so great. You couldn't have asked for better kids, really. But it's so difficult because we get to like this, like, do I discipline them? What sort of role do I take there? And I think anyone that comes in like a step parent kind of role would feel that.
Of course.
So it can be like a bit sort of difficult to navigate that in any sort of relationship. But I think that on top of all the other things that are new and changing and stuff, it can be really overwhelming at times.
Totally. What would you say then, like, I guess like what has been one of the more harder things for you to have to like navigate then as a couple? Like, 'cause obviously like it can all just be sunshine and roses. Like, would you say like that is one of the pieces, or?
I think kids were a big one. Yeah. I mean, because 2 of the kids have gone off to university and have moved away, and then they come back and forth sort of thing. And then we've got a little one who's very needy. But also just, there's a lot. The house, just being under construction, honestly, has put such a...
We did it hard. We went overseas move, no preparation, 3 kids, homesickness, house renovation. Yeah. Let's do it all at once.
That's why we feel like there is what could bring us down if we could survive all of that, because the house renovation has been huge. I mean, we were many, many months sitting on the stairs, and then we upgraded to lawn chairs. And now we're close. We just have one more little room, one more bathroom to do. But it's been a lot. We had a tornado. We had a lot of damage to the outside of the house. We had to get that fixed.
Oh, right.
It's been a lot. And then and then the whole immigration and dealing with that, working through that, trying to get a work permit and all of this stuff. Healthcare has been actually an eye opener for me.
Okay.
because I thought the healthcare was great here, and I boasted about it. And I thought it was wonderful until she got here, and I realized that just isn't the case. Finding a doctor.
Yes, it's so difficult.
Yeah, you guys have a doctor shortage, which is so bizarre to me and so foreign that I just keep thinking, why? Because you think the countries are so similar in some ways, and in some ways they are.
Okay.
But you just presume that medical is going to be the same because we both have free healthcare.
Yes.
We both, so you just presume it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
So to have it not be is hard.
Yeah. So it's not great, but I mean, we've worked through it, but it's just everything kind of is.
Well, I feel like you both just faced like some of the biggest like life events that couples go through, over a long period of time and like a very pressure cooker moment, right? So yeah, I agree. I think you were gonna just keep pushing through, right? I mean, it's like forcing you to grow so much as humans.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
No, just to like change the subject a little bit outside of the relationship. So I'm just curious to get like, I guess your feedback and your thoughts on, I think just like the representation, I think of like the diverse kind of lesbian community, like in media, because I don't know, I'm not going to share my opinion yet, but I'm curious to get your opinion of that.
Mine's a bit, I don't know. I'm mine has changed throughout the last several years. Yeah. In that I've always said, I think that the representation was always, I think TikTok has changed the world in terms of opening people's eyes to a lot of things, because I always felt that previous to TikTok, there was only two kinds of lesbians, the Ellen kind and the Rosie. That's it. Nobody else.
So true.
And then TikTok came along and opened people's eyes to, oh, wow, like lesbians look very different.
Yes.
But then we all sort of did this, like, let's fall into the stereotype for a joke.
Yes.
Right? And the mask and the femme and all of that. So I don't really know where we are right now, but I do think that it has changed in terms of like somebody living in the hills in Kentucky knows what a lesbian looks like. That isn't Ellen and isn't Rosie.
Yes, exactly. There's way more spectrum there.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel definitely in TV and movies, I feel like, especially like many years ago, it used to be very much just like sexualized, like two femmes together all the time, right? And then it sort of moved into this like femme mask thing where it's like, which one's the boy?
Yeah, of course.
Right? And then the representation sort of went towards that. And now, I think with TikTok, it has sort of changed it and opened your mind up to it. I think acceptance. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I think we've noticed that like the acceptance is sort of going in through tiers. You can almost see society accepting things in tiers and different groups of people. And lesbians were first. Yes, and I acknowledge that I don't have it that bad because I'm easily acceptable now. Obviously, if I was femme presenting and attractive to straight males, I'm far more accepted. Yes, as I am with a mask. But I also feel that like I go against the grain. Like, why does this mask lesbian like June Cleaver? Like, why is that so confusing, right? But we think that, and then you've got different tiers of people in our community that are accepted at different levels, and we have a long way to go. Yes. We have a long way to go. And I think, well, that's our whole thing. I think that we're a community. And I think that some people in our community forget that we are a community. Yes, exactly. And they're very singular, like it's me and I have to fight for the lesbians. But we feel together that, it's a community and we support each other throughout that community, whatever that is. And I think that's the important piece is to bringing the rest of society up to is that we all have to be open and honest and with our support to one another in the community, meaning every single person in our community.
Yeah, we can't leave anyone behind. I think
it's easy to do that though.
Absolutely.
And to be very self-serving.
Totally.
But so we've been pretty big advocates on that, I think. Yeah. Both a lot in our community as well, like in our town community as well as, in the big picture. So
totally. Well, and I honestly, like, I think that's what for you, Melissa, like what I guess caught my eye on TikTok when I first saw your videos was like, you know, it was like, I was so like excited to see, I think just like someone with like tattoos and was like more masculine presenting, talking about these types of subjects, which I think like historically, if we look at them, could be like more like feminine things,
Yes.
you know, like,
yes.
And so I think it was like this balance of like the masculine and the femininity together. And then like the fact that you're on national television now, like getting to have that representation. It's like, okay, well, I have a neck tattoo and I'm teaching you about cleaning things. Like,
Yeah.
I love it because I think it like breaks so much of these like, just, I don't know.
It does. But I mean, I think on that level, I know that you can relate to this because what I notice is that on my own page, it's a very different feeling than when national TV on their page posts you. The comments are very different. And I do feel that they're changing, but there is a very big difference with the comments that happen on, let's say, the TV's platform, to the point where sometimes they remove the ability to make comments, but I'm fine. I will lean right into those comments. I often will do videos about them, you know, the comments, because I don't know how else to get around that and to have people just move on, accept it, you know, and because it's sort of foreign to what they know, and so it's really easy to make comments on social media that
very
are
much a projection
hurtful.
of their fear or whatever, their own like what they've been taught. But how do you navigate that as like a couple though? Like how do you support each other, I think, through dealing with that?
Well, Melissa tends to, she can get caught up in when there's bad comments that come through on another platform that's not her own, because she has no control over it. She can't delete them.
Totally.
Right?
So frustrating.
And she really doesn't get any on a personal page that much.
Totally.
Like it is so rare. So when
so when she does, I know when it's happening. I tend to monitor it at the same time. So I know if she's at work and I can monitor, I'm like, right, okay, this is what's happening. So I feel that not reading them is really helpful. I know that she needs to sometimes just to go into that to just see what's about.
Totally.
But I do try and encourage her to not go too deep. You can look at them for 5 minutes, but then I don't want you looking at them anymore. Or we discuss like how she's going to address them, things like that. But I feel that I do need to constantly remind her that no, this is just on their page. This is just a different audience, and that's why you're getting it. And then we always go back and look at like good messages on her page.
But I like to know what people really feel. I do. Sometimes I want to know because it tells me sort of what the climate is out there and that we need to do more work so that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because it's again, it's fear. It's people that have never seen anything like it or heard anything
100%.
like it. And it's fear. But, you know, like I said, I'm not afraid to make videos and go back at it and address it.
Totally. And I think it's important because I think sometimes people think that we're like in a bubble, right? And like, especially people who live in Toronto, they're like, no, things are great. And I'm like, as both, all of us don't live in Toronto, it's like, it is a very different experience.
Like even moving from, because the place I lived in, Sydney, was very gay.
Yes,
everyone was gay. I was surrounded by the community the entire time. And then moving to a small town in Canada, very different.
Totally.
Very, very different.
Yes.
I'm not saying that where we live is homophobic. I wouldn't say that. But there is...
It does exist.
It does exist.
Do you ever feel like you pull back sometimes? Like for Tyler and I, when we moved out of the city, it was like, I was like afraid to hold his hand again and like to be affectionate in like certain ways, or
I think
don't know.
I've gone through that in my life, but as I get older, I don't care because I feel like I have to do that in order to make people feel comfortable. The more I actually feel that I'm protecting them, because I do think that's what it is. Or if you're around elderly people, you don't want to tell them, like, you don't want to hurt their feelings. There's all these emotions. And now I don't, I just deal with it because I'm not hurting you. I have to keep remember, I am not doing anything to affect your life. You're doing something that is affecting your life by being, uncomfortable around me, and we love each other. Come on, like, we are in the times now.
Not hurting anyone.
But we've had to address things that have happened in our town that have been uncomfortable over since you've been here. I don't know. I don't even know. She reads the paper. I never read the local newspaper, and then we found some stuff.
We went to war with the local newspaper.
No way.
Oh, bad. Because the drag queen thing and coming to read at the library, and that was a whole thing. But again. That is our community, right? We don't represent just the lesbians. It is a community. So we went to battle with the newspaper, and it was a long battle.
It was a really long battle.
Yeah. I mean, because we had protesters, and then we went in to educate the people at the newspaper, and they had no idea. They all just stood there and cried. And it's like, okay, but that's good because we there was 5 people who didn't know anything before we went in there.
Exactly.
But I think that's the only way to do
positive change.
Yeah. So, I mean, that did help. But again, it's just remembering that it's a community. It's not just the lesbians.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate that because, I think like when we look back at our history, it very much was like a coming together of a lot of our communities in order to like fight for our rights,
Absolutely.
But then it seemed to
it's like everyone sort of broke off, and it's like, I hate that because I've never felt such a giant divide in our communities, that make up, our community that like, and it's sad. And I really hope that we are, especially with the climate and how things are changing, that we are hopefully going to find a place that is a lot closer together because all of us need our support in these sort of like dealing with these human rights issues that are happening
100%.
now.
Yeah, that's just it. And I think I think it's just education and it's time like anything else, and it's a lot. We have a long way to go.
Yeah,
I mean, we shouldn't be kidding ourselves and thinking that everything's fine.
Totally.
We're all fine. Everybody's accepting of everything because that just isn't the case.
No, 100%. I agree. Yeah. Well, I adore you both. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast and being so vulnerable and open about your relationship.
So happy.
I feel like people are going to have a lot of really great takeaways. But before I let you go, where can people find you on social media for both of you?
So Melissa is Melissa Peteras.
Yeah.
On most things, honey.
Yeah, but Laundry Talk is generally the easiest way to find me is just through Laundry Talk. And I'm on Insta and Facebook and TikTok, of course.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just do TikTok. It's at Everyday Trace.
Yes.
Just Everyday Trace.
Yeah. I will tag them in the description underneath the podcast as well. So
thank you so much for having us.
Thank
you. Okay. Thank you. I know.